If you've been flying the Harrier for a while now, you may have been on a server that has the AIRBOSS script integrated. Here's a couple of tips and tricks to help you get a 5.0 approach and landing. Welcome to the Hoverstop channel. We're going to deep dive into vertical lift. We're behind the boat, the TACAN's dialed in, and we're at bingo fuel. Let's spend a few minutes giving you the tools you need to get that perfect Case 1 recovery. I'll go through each of these sections in turn. We'll start with initials, the brake, downwind, final, the groove, or if you're 1960s Fleet Air on, the Roger, and finally crossing. Okay, initials. We're somewhere behind the ship. Let's take a moment to get ahead of the aircraft and set things up. Okay, on the left MPCD, get the ESHD up, set up the TACAN, and input your course line. On the upfront controller, tune into the LSO and tower frequencies and turn up the volume. And then just below that, you're going to have to set your HUD to either day or night and then adjust the brightness. Here we're going to be flying into the sun, so we want the thing on day and we want the brightness turned right up so we can see what's going on through the glare. On the right MPCD, get the HUD repeater up, so that way you've got a backup in case either your HUD fails or you can't see through the sun glare. And while you're here, turn off the EW and turn off the expendables so you don't accidentally fire off salvo flares onto the flight deck officer. Okay, a few other things to sort out. First, set the lights. Most of the time I run in with my lights off, but I don't know what the convention is, so if you've got opinions on this, please voice out in the comments. Next, I'll check that the hover stop is clear and all the way back. My AFC is set to on, my anti-skid is off, flaps are auto, and water is off. Okay, let's start flying the plane. Do a quick check of your warning and caution panel and make sure the only thing you can see is the skid annunciation. After that, the magic numbers are going to be 3 miles, 350 knots, and 800 feet on the rad out. The top tip at this point is going to be to turn on the alt hold mode of the AFCS and be as accurate as you can. The better you do here, the more predictable and consistent your results will be. Next up is the brake. We're going to offset to the starboard side of the ship on the correct BRC. First thing to check, as we get close to the boat, is to make sure the deck is clear. If it's not, say there's a helicopter on one of the spots, it's better to know now in the event that we have to land on a different spot. Next, we verify that the BRC is accurate. We should be flying the exact heading that was given to us on the radio. If it's not, then make a correction now and quickly calculate the downwind heading we need to roll out on. In this case, it's reported 110 degrees. It's good, and we can confirm that 290 is the heading we'll need to be on downwind. One final thing to look for is the time when we're abeam. In this case, it's going to be about 48 seconds, so we're going to add 10 seconds onto that, and then our brake time will be at second 58. Alright, deep breath, because now we're going to start working. Before we get into it, make sure you have a few things mapped on your hotels. You need air brake out or toggle, your flap mode down, and you need landing gear down or toggle, and water mode down. Optionally, bind the master warning caution reset because the AFCS is likely to yell at you as soon as you start your brake turn. Okay, a lot is about to happen. I'm going to break it down a little bit, but fundamentally, the steps are going to be idle, air brake, bank, and then pull. Straight away, we want to put our velocity vector onto the horizon to make sure we don't balloon or dive in the turn. If you do either of those things, you're going to end up in some weird energy situation that you'll need to recover from later, and it's going to add to your workload further down the line. If you get it right now, the rest of the pattern is going to be stable. The other thing to look at in the turn is going to be your G-loading. You want it to be about 1% of your indicated airspeed. Okay, let's rewind. We're going to talk about airspeed, actions, and alpha. On airspeed, we need to be 300 knots. We're going to put our flaps down to stall. At 250 knots, we're going to put our gear down. That'll slow us down and dirty the airframe up. Then we can set water to landing and the nozzles to between 50 and 60 degrees. Okay, last point. As you get to the end of the turn, you'll see your angle of attack will start to increase to about 11 or 12 units of alpha. When that happens, you can start letting the nose dip down a little bit. The speed should be dropping down to about 160 knots, at which point you'll get the aileron droop, and that will cause a slight increase in lift as indicated by a little jump on the velocity vector. Right then, here we go. Good luck.
Caution, caution. Caution, caution. Caution, caution. Caution, caution.
Next up,
Caution.
downwind. As we roll out, we're going to gently descend down to 600 feet exactly, and we should end up between 0.8 and 1.0 DME from the boat. And then we can start getting into some checks. Let's go to HUD VSTOL Master Mode, check that our nozzles are between 50 and 60, our flaps are extended to 62 degrees, our alpha is between 10 and 12 units, our gear is down and centered indicated by the C, our nose wheel steering is engaged, and our lights are off. Next we're going to time our turn to final. For us the wind over the deck is about 10 to 20 knots, so we're going to turn abeam our intended touchdown point. If the wind is higher, we're going to turn sooner, and if the wind is lower, we're going to turn later. From this moment in the turn, everything's going to be graded. For me, the most important parameter is angle of attack. It needs to be between 10 and 12 units. I shoot for 10.5 to give myself a buffer. As we roll through the 90, which for us is a heading of 200 degrees, we want to be between 400 and 450 knots, and we want to keep checking the boat to make sure we roll out on centerline. Throughout the turn, we're going to keep the bank constant as we can, manage pitch and power to give that 10.5 units of alpha, and put the witch's hat on the horizon. As we come around the corner, we should be perfectly lined up, just offset to the left of the boat. Let's pause here and take a moment to look at what we're aiming for. Unique to when you're doing a Stovall approach, your aiming point is not your intended point of touchdown. Here we're going to have to aim for an imaginary point that's off to the left of the centerline by approximately 150 feet abeam of the aft lift and about 100 feet AGL. To give you a rough idea of what that looks like, you can see the different zones marked out by flares in this image. The red box indicates where we're aiming for, and it's where we should come to a stop relative to the boat alongside it. The green box is the landing point. Here are some good visual references when you're landing on the Invincible class. If you look at the forward surveillance radar, when that's on the horizon, you're at the right altitude. When you're looking directly at the superstructure, the large dome on the aft section, which is the 909 fire control radar for the CDOT, that is where you should be stopping and beginning your cross. Nearly there. We can practically smell that unicorn poop. All we've got to do is cross. From here, we're going to continually monitor our deceleration and closure rate on the boat. We're going to use pitch to manage that deceleration and add power to maintain the glide slope. You'll notice the glide slope is appearing to be quite shallow because our relative motion to the ship is relatively slow at this point, but we're still maintaining that 3-degree glide slope to our imaginary crossing point. Once we're there, we get established, we check the relative motion again, we check that we don't need to go forwards or backwards, and then once we've got the all clear, we can cross. We then get into a stabilised hover relative to the deck, hopefully on the centre line, and then we bring our aircraft down 300 to 450 feet per minute until we touch.
Stabilize. Idle.
As soon as we're down, throttle idle, flaps up, nozzles forward and taxi off the
Welcome
hotspot.
aboard.
Thankfully it doesn't judge you too hard if you're a foot or two off the centre line, because I was nowhere close. This approach was a 4.0. We'll talk about the grading system now, and we can figure out what we need to do better next time if we stand a chance of hitting a 5.0. And here it is. This is the AIRBOSS Funkman integration on Discord. So each time you get a trap score, then it will pump this out to your Discord channel of your choice. And as we can see, it has given me a dabbing unicorn, which, like I say, is a little bit optimistic, but we can see where we went wrong and what we did well. Okay, let's talk deviations. There's 4 steps that each one will get graded. The first one is indicated by an XX, which is the start of the final. We didn't have any deviations, so that bit's missing. But the next one is IM, or in the middle. Here we can see that it says LUR and then DR. So LUR is lined up right, it's got brackets around it which indicates that it's a minor deviation, and then DR is drift right. The drifts are advisory and don't affect your score. The third section is in close, which is indicated by IC, and again lined up right, minor, and then finally at the ramp with AR with another lined up right. From here the grading's simple. If you don't get any deviations, it's a 5.0. If you only get minor deviations, it's a 4.0. If you just get normal deviations, it's 3.0. And if you get a major deviation, it's a 2.0. The actual amount of deviation will depend on what you're flying, but for us in the Harrier, if you're looking to get a perfect, you need to have angles of attack that stay between 9.5 and 12 degrees. Your line-up error can't be more than plus or minus 5 degrees, and your glide slope error can't be any more than minus 0.3 to plus 0.4 degrees. If you get that all right, then you won't have a deviation. Okay, that's all we've got for today. Hopefully that's useful. If you've got any tips or tricks of your own, please add them to the comments and I'll maybe wrap them up into another video in the future. For now, let's hope your power margins are plentiful and all your set downs are survivable.